Hello YouTube, this is Berto Prey 5. Can anybody hear me? Hey Darth, this is my first time going live, actually being live without Acid Design's fancy graphics. Great, great. Well, today is not really going to be about Star Trek much. Uh, I know it's a live stream. I don't expect there's going to be many people here, but it's basically a rant on my hospital bed and, to a point, life in general. For those of you who don't know, if you don't know me on Anti-Tracker's Discord or from wherever, I just turned 40 years old last week, and this is my hospital bed. I've lived in this bed more or less nonstop for 9 years now. Long story short, in May 2009, I was 30 years old. I was doing great. I had an excellent job. I was making good money. The family was pretty good. I spent my 30th birthday, November. I brought my family and I didn't bring them. I didn't pay for all of them, but I brought my family and my friends paid their own way, but joined me in Vegas for a big birthday celebration. We had excellent time. We went out to shows. We did 4x4ing in the desert. We went to a dinner show. Went to clubs. Went to the Dueling Piano Bar at New York, New York. It was a really good time. My sister was there, some of her friends, my friends, my parents. It was a good. It was probably the top of my life. I mean, things were good, money was good, everybody was happy, and then came May 2009. Right, so my birthday was November 2008, my 30th birthday. May 2009. Now, I was no stranger to pain. Unfortunately, for quite a number of years, through my 20s, I was having bouts with kidney stones. I've had a bad back. I had sciatica, terrible sciatica. There were days I could barely walk. Days I would stay in bed because it was just excruciating pain. And anybody that has that kind of pain, I mean, they have my full understanding of how rough that is. Because when you have that type of pain and you don't even know how you're going to get up to go to the bathroom, it's scary. And I remember that. I remember having that. And oh man, it would happen in cycles. Like every few months I'd go from being okay, then it would start, and I would know there'd be a month to 2 months that I wasn't going to feel good, and it was going to get worse before it got better. But it always did get better. For years I was doing physical therapy to try and strengthen my core and help with the back. And for the most part, that was the worst of my medical issues. I had high triglycerides, not from drinking. I rarely drank. despite working for a liquor company. But the triglycerides, yeah, my diet wasn't great. I was overweight. I still am. But my triglycerides were like between 1 and 2,000. And that's quite high. And the doctors even said that, your diet doesn't help, but diet isn't causing those numbers. There was clearly something genetic or in my body that was making my triglycerides especially high. But anyway, apparently high triglycerides can cause pancreatitis. It was not something I was aware of. And going into May, the beginning of May, I was having a lot of pain, but like I said, pain was nothing abnormal for me. First, I thought it might have been kidney stones. So I ended up going to a urologist who did a sonogram of the kidneys and the bladder, the whole urinary tract, and he said he didn't see any kidney stones. So he kind of discounted that. So I went to the chiropractor and physical therapy place I'd been going to, and they gave me some muscle relaxers, which when my back was really bad, the muscle relaxers would help. It's not something you want to take often, but it's a lot better than being in incredible pain. And if you can hear that, that's the train that passes my house a few times every hour. I don't hear it, but you might have. Okay, don't worry. So anyway, it turned out that the muscle relaxers weren't doing anything. I spent a few days keeled over at home in pain. I'd go into work when I had to work, but it wasn't good. So I ended up talking to my doctor, and he finally said, you know what, you have high triglycerides, and it might be pancreatitis. Now, the only thing I'd ever heard of pancreatitis was I had a good friend whose father had pancreatitis. He went to the hospital. He was home in a week and a half. I don't know exactly how they treated him, but I saw him a month later. He was absolutely fine. You would never know he had been sick, so I just assumed pancreatitis wasn't all that big of a deal. I mean, because that was the only experience I had ever heard of it. So I go to the emergency room. They test for pancreatitis. Sure enough, it is pancreatitis. Now, the pain had just been getting worse and worse. And by the time I was in the hospital, it's the local hospital to me in Queens, New York. And I go into the hospital, and they admit me. And the next thing I remember, just the next day, I spend one night in the hospital, in a hospital bed. And I've been in the hospital bed at that point for maybe 12 hours straight. And I was like, I can't take being in this bed this long. Even though it was incredibly painful, I asked the nurse to help me into the chair that they keep next to the hospital bed. And she did. And like as soon as they got into the chair, the pain just got worse. And I was like, oh my God, this was a terrible idea. And so I was in the chair maybe 2 or 3 minutes. She helped me up. I got back into bed. I had no idea at that time that would be the last time I stood for at least 10 years, because it hasn't happened again since. Doctors came by. They said, yes, you got pancreatitis. It's extremely painful. I was like, yeah, doc, tell me something I don't know. And they said, well, what we can do is we can put you to sleep for a few days, 4 or 5 days maybe. And when you wake up, most of the pain will be gone. And for somebody who is suffering in incredible pain, that sounded like the best solution the best solution I could hope for. Just anything to stop the pain. So I said, yep, sign me up. I don't quite remember exactly how it happened after that. I think they just gave me an injection at some point, and I fell asleep. And that was May 9th or 10th, 2009. So, I expected to be asleep 4 or 5 days. Well, the rest at this point is what I hear from family who was with me at the hospital almost the entire time I was there. They were at the hospital the entire time. They weren't allowed to stay with me the entire time at the beginning because of ICU rules and stuff. But what happened was, after they put me under, I almost immediately got a hospital-borne Klebsiella infection. The director of ICU said he didn't have the Klebsiella when he got in here. This is on us. You know, we came from the hospital. We know that much. And whatever. They had to fight it. Apparently, I guess that might have weakened me somewhat. And I was still out. And I guess they needed to put me on a respirator. Because I was having trouble breathing, probably from the weakness. And so I'm on a respirator. I'm out of it, so I don't know what's going on. They ended up having to trach me. They cut a hole in my neck. And while I was trached and I was out again, days turned to weeks, turned to months. And they were telling the family, oh, he should wake up by next week, by next week, by next week. And it just kept going on like that. At one point, now they had me, I was laying almost motionless in a hospital bed. So to prevent bed sores, the hospital beds they have physically go back and forth to help your body shift weight to literally try to prevent bed sores because they're so common. Okay, but while my parents and my family were there, they would notice that the tube that was going down my throat would get stuck on the bed rail as the bed shifted. And luckily somebody was always there to lift it over the bed rail so it didn't get pulled out of my throat. And they told this to the nurses, and they told this to the doctors. And they were like, oh, don't worry about it, it'll be fine. Well, they were forced out of the room during a shift change. And as you could expect, no one was there to check the hose. The bed turned, the hose got caught on the side of the bed, and this thing apparently has like a ball on it on the inside, ripped out of my throat, making the hole bigger. And worse, my lung collapsed. I was not getting air. Thankfully, all the alarms went off, and a very quick-thinking doctor, I'm told, literally jumped on top of me, and I guess in ICU they think ahead somewhat, and they had an extra trach right near the bed, right next to me. And I'm told he got it in me, and I got air again in seconds, but the lung had collapsed. And whatever they had to do to fix that apparently caused my whole body, my whole face blew up like a balloon. My mother was distraught. She tried to take pictures of it because she knew this was bad, but in her, she took pictures with her phone, but she didn't know how to save the pictures, and apparently they never got saved. So it's just as well I never saw those pictures, because I don't really want to remember what it was like. I was just told how bad it was from everybody who did see me. Anyway, months go on. I don't honestly remember. Oh, also, my organs start shutting down because it's not just Klebsiella. Then I get a fungus infection. I get all these other infections from being in the hospital. And so my kidneys shut down, so they have to put me on dialysis. Well, after a while, they can't find a place to stick me that the dialysis works. They've got to use these huge needles because the blood was coagulating so much, I guess from the high triglycerides or whatever, that it was clogging the dialysis machine. So they had to keep going to bigger needles, and eventually they just started putting them in my thighs to get to a big vein or whatever they need for the machine. And even that was having problems. But thankfully, my kidneys came back on their own, and I didn't need dialysis. By the time I awoke, the dialysis was over. So that was good. And anyway, so May, June, July, August. Sometime around the end of August, I'm told, is when I finally started to wake up. But I didn't remember I was getting up. I had no long-term memory at this time. And to be honest, there was also weeks I ran a fever. I ran a fever for weeks, maybe months. It got as high as 106 at times. So they literally wasn't sure if I suffered brain damage from either the lack of oxygen or the fever, and they wouldn't know until I woke up. So early August, or not early August, sometime in August, I first started waking up. But it wasn't until late September or so that I actually start to get day-to-day recall of what happened. Now my family, well, at one point my family asked, what's the next step here? And the doctors were literally like, we don't know. To be honest, Mr. and Mrs., my last name, which most of you know, but I don't need to say it. Most people with pancreatitis either get better or die by now. So we've really never been in this situation. They didn't know what to do because, that's doctors. I'm always the exception and never the rule. I've learned that, and every new doctor doesn't understand that. But anyway, we keep going. So after the fevers, after everything, I finally start to remember things. Now, I can't talk. Understand, I'm still trached. I've got this big trach with an extra big size hole in my throat because it got ripped out. They were not even sure this hole would ever close again. And they weren't sure I'd ever be able to speak again, because when you're trached, you can't speak. It's a weird sensation. And I ended up getting bed sores because once the trach came out, they deemed me having an unstable airway, and they no longer had the bed move. Rather than fix the problem and use an arm to keep the... If you ever see the movies these days and you see somebody trached in a hospital bed, there's an arm that comes over the bed that the tube is tied to on top, so that the tube doesn't slide against the rails of the bed. So clearly they should have had an arm over the bed to hold this tube. I don't know why they didn't have it. Maybe I was too tall. I am 6'4", and most hospital beds are designed for 6'2" and less. So that comes into part. I mean, it's so ridiculous that, I mean, in an ICU where you're literally costing my insurance company $1 million, they had my feet hanging off the hospital bed onto a chair with a pillow on it because I was just too tall for the hospital bed. It took them a while to get a hospital bed I actually fit on. Yeah, if you're tall, if you're big and tall, don't get sick, because they're not really designed. I mean, this wasn't a tiny, small town hospital. I mean, I live in New York City. I live in the 5 boroughs of New York City. The hospital I go to is considered one of the better hospitals in the area. That was the hospital I went to. Yeah, it is not a small place by any means. They have hundreds of rooms, if not more. And they had a giant, in fact, they were building an entire new wing to the hospital. When I got there, they had just broken ground. And the year later that I got out of the hospital, it was just about complete. Anyway, it's neither here nor there. Luckily, when I started waking up, and I'm sorry, I see the chats. I'll read the chats in a minute. When I started waking up, Mom had created a board I could try to point to like point at letters to say something, except that I also really couldn't move. I was incredibly weak. It's a condition I later find out was called critical illness neuropathy. And when you've been critically ill, particularly in an ICU setting, for an extended period of time, and your body is in like such toxic shock, your immune system actually begins to attack its own nerves for God knows what reason. And the myelin sheath that covers the nerve gets destroyed, and without that sheath covering, the electrical signals literally can't get back and forth along the nerves. They do grow back usually, but at a rate of 1 to 2 millimeters every few months, I'm told. So God knows how much of it I lost, but if it's a millimeter a month, and I lost, 100 millimeters worth, which is, 100 centimeters would be a meter. would be 3 feet of nerve. Now, I'm 6'4", so clearly from the torso to the feet, it could be 3 feet if it was all gone. But this isn't even that. Let's say it was just 100 millimeters, which is a tenth of 3 feet. You're talking up to 100 months for just that much to grow back, assuming all goes well. So, it could happen. It could take a long time, if it happens at all. So I wake up and I can't talk, I can't move, and all I know is that I'm in incredible pain. Pain that would make the sciatica and the kidney stone pains, I won't say pale in comparison, but it was a new level of pain. A new level of pain that I really couldn't imagine. And literally, the skin had disintegrated in parts of my back, 3 parts of my back. I had 3 stage 4 bed sores. And stage 4 are the worst kind. They rarely, if ever, heal. And the biggest one, at the sacrum, the base of the spine, I was told, again, I didn't want to see pictures, but I was told at its biggest, you could literally fit 2 fists in the hole. Not my fist, because I have big hands, but like a normal person's fist. So maybe one of my fists into the hole, and you could see 2 inches of my tailbone. How do they let it get that bad? I have no idea. But, so doctors had to, once I was awake and they could turn me again, doctors had to come like every day and debride the wound. And I was screaming, but I couldn't talk. I couldn't make noise. So the doctors didn't think anything of it. But my parents, who could see my face and see I was screaming, was trying to point to them and tell them that. So they would just say, oh, give him some morphine. But what they didn't realize is that the morphine had become completely ineffective. It had worked for a while, and I'll be honest, it felt pretty good. I could understand why people get addicted to it, although there was a time when I had an A line, which was a line that goes right to my heart, I believe, and they would put the morphine in that. And when they did that, I mean, understand, I was in constant pain. Constant, torturous, hell-like pain. And they would give me some morphine right into my heart, more or less. And for a precious few minutes, the pain would go away. And yeah, I really liked the morphine. And I would try to talk the doctors into giving me more. They were, of course, scared to, because they are only certain much they're supposed to give you. But once the A-line was out, and they were just giving it to me into my arm, it was never the same again. And it quickly kind of became completely useless, to the point that I stopped even asking for it. But they would give it to me anyway, because that was what they do, morphine, and then do the debriding, and it would hurt like hell. And so Time goes on. I spend 7.5 months in the ICU. They transfer me to a regular room. Uh, Long story short, they eventually take the trach out. Now, I mean, there's weeks they're trying to train me to breathe without the trach. There's literally a metal cap they're putting on my throat hole to try and give me some way of communicating. Despite all logic, somehow I managed to get some voices out despite being trach. They're like, you're not supposed to be able to talk. Well, I was. I managed to figure out how to talk somehow. It wasn't great, but it was a lot better than nothing. It was around this point that they started asking me questions. Do I know where I am? Do I know my name? What year is it? Who's the president? And I got them all, which is surprising because I was pretty out of it. In fact, Mom said when they asked her when they asked me who the president was, and I said Barack Obama, she was shocked because this happened so early in 2009 that she was out of it. She thought it was still Bush. So I actually knew that, and I'm kind of glad my primitive brain was able to answer such questions, because I don't know. I certainly wasn't thinking, because I can't remember that happening. I do remember the day they came and they wanted to see if I could eat again, because I went 8-9 months without eating any food, and most of the months without any nutrition at all. They had attempted to give me nutrition through a tube in my stomach, but they kept screwing that up. One doctor would fix it, another doctor would come on and say, oh, it's in the wrong place, and would move it, and then the other doctor would see, no, that's the wrong place, and try to move it back. In the meantime, it'd make the pancreatitis worse. So they ended up just pulling it out. They tried to give me IV nutrition right through the blood. That was just resulting in more infections. So you know what? I had extra weight. They didn't give me any nutrition, and my body atrophied muscle completely, and a lot of stored fat. When I went into the hospital, I was heavy. I was 360 pounds, but I was 6'4", and I was muscular. I mean, I wasn't Captain America. I don't want to say Captain America. That's not it. Mr. America, whoever Arnold Schwarzenegger or Mr. Universe. I mean, I wasn't a bodybuilder. Excuse me. But I was strong. I mean, I could lift a good weight. My legs, my calves were big. I mean, there were people that would see me walking and come up to me and say, dude, you've got to just enter a calf show. It's just for your muscles, just for calves. It's like, you don't have to do anything. You just walk out wearing shorts. And I mean, you'd win a calf show. I'm like, get away from me. I don't want to do calf show. I'm an engineer. But I had muscles. I took them for granted. I was big, but they were there. Oh my God. When I woke up and the first pictures of me, my legs became tiny, just bone. My arms were tiny. It was... And that was the saddest part of all. seeing all the muscles gone. And my face is round now and puffy because I put some weight back on. Not as much as I was. I'm 255 pounds now, which is maybe 25 pounds more than I want to be. But I don't know why it all came back to the face. But at 217 pounds, which is where I left the hospital to go to a rehab, which is another crazy story I'm not even going to bring up right now. But I was 217 pounds, and I looked so sick. I looked like a end state. I'm sorry, I keep hitting the microphone. This is the mic, so. I look like some type of, I don't know, cancer patient, the AIDS patients you used to see back in the day who didn't have a lot of time left. I mean, the bones were pointing out of my chin, my cheek, my ribs were visible. I still felt I had man boobs, but I guess I really didn't. Not as much. And anyway, so to the hospital bed. It's about a year. We got forced out of the hospital, forced to a rehab. We'll skip the rehab story, but spent 2 months at a rehab and decided to come home. I was in too much pain for the rehab to do anything. And so now I owned my own house. I bought my house in 2005. And I was living here alone initially. Now I got a house purposely that had a basement that had its own kind of furnished apartment. Because I was single. I was a single guy. And my dad was also living alone at this point, and he was starting to have some medical issues. So I got this house. I figured Dad could live downstairs in the basement. I'd live up here on the main floor. We'd both have privacy. But, most of the time, if it was just us around, we could have dinner together, or, he could come up here and watch TV. Whatever he wanted to do. It was good, but when we needed privacy, we had privacy. So that was the plan. That was why I bought this house in particular. And, unfortunately, the best plans never go as expected. The week before Dad was supposed to move in, he had ended up in the hospital with a pretty serious issue. I ended up moving his stuff over here myself. And of course, when he got out of the hospital, he wasn't quite ready to be living on his own, so I had him move in up here with me. And so it just worked out that Dad was living up here with me. We never actually moved him into the basement, but when I was having company and I needed that place, he would stay in the basement for those days or nights. So he could go downstairs when he needed to, but he was living out of up here. So it was me and my dad living out of this house. I was rarely home. I was at work. I would travel. I used to travel at least a week of every month for work. Anyway, so that was the house I left. When I got back from the hospital and the rehab a year later, everything was different, obviously. First, my mom had moved back in. They had separated, but she came back. She was with me from day one at the hospital. As soon as I went in the hospital, Dad called her, and she came over to the hospital, and she ended up leaving her job to take care of me. And she was at the hospital literally pretty much every day I was there for that year. And and then she moved into my house. And my sister was living in Florida, had come up for Mother's Day to see my mother, which was the day uh, before I went into the hospital, the day after I went into the hospital. And my sister also decided to stay up here once I got sick. And she moved into my house too. So I was in the hospital. My dad, my mom, and my sister were living out of my house. Now, eventually, my sister had a dog who she had in Florida, who she had been living with her boyfriend at the time. He brought the dog up, so I had one dog at the house. My mother had a dog with her apartment in Staten Island, and her dog came over. So it was my dad, my mom, my sister, and two beagles living at my house. So when I came home, the main thing I needed was a hospital bed. Okay, I don't know how far I'm into this. I don't know how long I've been talking, but we're finally getting to the hospital bed. Now, hospital beds vary. Now, I needed a specialty bed because of the bed sores. I mean, there are cheap hospital beds that, maybe cost a couple $1,000s. But a specialty hospital bed, especially for somebody 6'4", is not cheap. And I had no insurance because back when I got sick, before Obamacare, insurance companies still had a maximum cap. And that maximum cap was $1 million for me. And 7.5 months in ICU costs well more than $1 million. So unknown to me, the hospital applied for Medicaid on my behalf. But they didn't tell me until later. So I had no insurance. When I left the rehab, I had been paying cash. Like I said, I had a good job. We ended up having to liquidate my 401k to pay for rehab and other medical bills. And this Hill Rom Hospital bed that I have, it cost $26,657. May 17th, 2010. Oh, and then it cost an extra $343 for the little remote control that makes the head go up and down. I don't know where they get $343 for a wired remote control, but sure enough, that brings the bed and the remote control to an even $27,000. Then there's 4% New York State sales tax, so an extra $1,079.99. A 4.5% city sales tax for $1,215.01. You see those Give me 1 minute, guys. I'll be right back. Okay, so uh, Mom, my dear mother, who is still my caregiver, caretaker. She's the one who literally helps me with everything I have to do because I can't get out of bed. Uh, Rushed over to tell me that despite the sales tax being on the bill, we actually did get that. We didn't have to pay that because it's a medical necessity. So it was only $27,000 and not the $29,000 that the bill reflects. So $27,000 for this hospital bed in 2010. At the time, all the doctors were telling us I'd be walking in a year. And when a year didn't happen, they said, well, 2 at the most. So understand, when we bought this bed and when we made all the changes to the house and when we bought the really old Ford van to try and get me some type of vehicle I could sit in a wheelchair, it was under the assumption I would be walking again in a year or two because that was what the doctors said. Not one of them said you might want to, there's the possibility you're not going to be walking in 2 years. They all told me that's what would be happening, that I'd be walking in a couple of years. So we made some decisions thinking this would be more temporary than it turned out to be. I don't believe it would have made a difference for the bed that we ultimately chose. Excuse me. I apologize for having to see that. I don't think it really made a difference for the bed we chose, but I don't know if they had some type of extended warranty available at the time that we didn't pick up, but we didn't pick up an extended warranty. At the time we bought the bed, they had 24-hour service. Sometime within those 10 years, I was actually within 5 years or so, they stopped having 24-hour service. So when my bed had an issue a few years back that needed repair, I called. Of course, it was a weekend, and I get a message saying, the tech support department is closed until Monday. If this is an emergency, call this other number. Well, it was an emergency for me because I need this bed to not get bed sores. If I'm out of this bed, if I'm in a regular bed, or this bed isn't functioning, its air system isn't functioning, my bed sores will get worse and will reopen. It's happened. Unfortunately, I've had to go back to the hospital 4 or 5 times since that initial hospitalization for various things, and every time I go, um, the hours I spend on the gurney, the ambulance ride there, they all cause the wound to reopen. So it's pretty important that the bed works. So much so that not only do we have battery backups for the bed, I bought a generator for the house because if the power ever goes out, we need a generator to keep the bed going. And the power's gone out more than once. So we've had generators ever since I've been home to keep the bed going because it's that important. But when we call up and they're like, no, we're closed for the weekend. It's like, you guys used to be open. Well, we're not anymore. Okay. So years ago, I called. I had to wait through the weekend. Mom found at least it was a working bed. It wasn't technically a hospital bed, but it was a bed that went up and down. The head went up, the feet went up, and it had a foam mattress. So it was a pretty comfortable bed, and it was relatively cheap. It was from a Sleepy's. We managed to get it delivered the next day. So we kind of had a backup bed that I used for a couple of days until we could get people here to fix the bed. Okay. Hopefully we wouldn't have an issue again, because, I mean, my life is basically just hope for the best. Because I can't afford another $27,000 for another bed. And I'm sure they cost more since it's been 10 years now. It's probably $47,000, but I haven't looked. Regardless, of course, Thanksgiving was this past week. Thursday, really Wednesday, I started hearing a noise that sounded like wind chimes. And I asked Mom if she heard it, and she did too. We tracked it everywhere. We were looking. I was muting the TV. You have to understand, I have a fan going to my side here. I have a humidifier. I have a air purifier. The computer fans make noise. So lots of things are spinning and making noise. And the bed has a fan system that it makes noise. So after ruling everything else out, we shut off the bed, and sure enough, the noise stopped. Okay. Well, it wasn't awful. So we plugged it back in and made the best of it. Because the bed has made weird noises before, but it usually would go away in a few hours, or it'd work itself out. But these noises got worse. And as Thanksgiving came around, it had turned into more of a grinding noise. Now, thankfully, and this was only through a divine intervention miracle, I suppose, way back when we first got the bed, it was set up wrong or something. So much so that they ended up replacing the bed after just a few months with another bed. And then the bed that they replaced it with, they never turned on the air system that's supposed to keep the mattress cool and dry. That's supposed to help prevent the bed sores. To the point in which the guy came back to turn that on, and the day he turned it on, for the first time the bed started making this humming noise. Now, it wasn't loud, but it was noticeable. I was like, wait, the bed's going to make that noise from now on? He's like, yep. Okay, I got used to it. It was annoying, but I was curious and I was concerned. I was like, wait, should you tell me this pump is going to run 24/7 non-stop? Yep. I was like, well, that doesn't make much sense. I feel like it's going to burn itself out. He's like, oh, no, it's good. It'll run. And to his credit, I'd say it ran for at least 8 years. So, get 8 years out of a pump isn't bad, but it did worry me to the point that I insisted he show me how to shut it off if I had to. And we luckily wrote that down, kept it all in the big book, and we needed it. 8 years later, we needed it. We opened the book, a few pages in, diagnostic code to put into the service menu. To get in the service menu, you type in 812. Then you go to diagnostics. You go to, data and diagnostic codes or something. And there's a keypad. And you had to type in 85. And then for one code, and then 104. Sorry, microphone. 104 for the other code. And that shuts off that fan. And we shut off that fan, and by we, I mean my mom, because, the screen isn't anywhere the patient can get to it. It's on the outside of the bed, so Mom shut it off. And, it was such a relief to finally have it quiet, because you didn't realize just how loud this thing had gotten over the years. Unfortunately, not having it on did adversely affect the comfort of the bed. Thursday, I didn't even bother trying to call for support because I knew for sure they'd be closed. Thursday night was a horrible night. The bed was not doing well. I kept waking up overnight. We tried everything we could to try to fix the mattress to get it working better. The bed has had a lot of issues besides this, but this was just like the icing on the cake, or the straw that broke the camel's back. And so in the morning, after how bad it was, I was like, you know what? Let's try to turn it back on. Maybe it's not so bad. Maybe it'll work now. Fingers were crossed. But no, we turned it on and it sounded worse than ever. To the point that it was afraid to leave it on. Like, it honestly sounded like it would probably break or start smoking if we kept it running. So we had to shut it off again. Okay, so I call Hill Rom, the good people at Hill Rom. And it's Friday. Now I know most people are off on Friday, but I figured it's worth a shot. Call them and, of course, get the message after hitting 2 or 3 numbers on a menu system that has recently changed, only to be told that tech support is closed for the holiday weekend and they will return on Monday. But they gave a number if this was an emergency. Now, I don't like to declare an emergency lightly, but this was kind of an emergency for me because, I don't want my bed sores to get worse, and I really don't have any other option other than going to the hospital, which will definitely make the bed sore worse, and cost me thousands of dollars. So I figured if you pay $27,000 for a hospital bed that's main design is to stop you from getting bed sores, that when the bed stopped being able to prevent bed sores, maybe that constituted an emergency. So I called the emergency number. A nice enough woman picked up. I explained the situation, and she said, well, yeah, you'll have to wait till Monday. I'm like, she's like, I can give you the phone number for tech support, but they're closed till Monday. I was like, I called tech support. They gave me the phone number for you. They said you were the emergency number. She's like, oh, well, I could try to give your name to somebody and see if they call you back. I mean, that is almost verbatim what she said. I could try to give your name to somebody and maybe they will call you back. So I said, sure, because, I mean, obviously there was no other option. And, well, I guess an hour or two later, somebody did call me back, a nice guy. And I explained the situation to him, and he said, yep, that's going to have to wait till Monday when tech support is back. So I said, I'm sorry, but isn't this an emergency number? And this kind of is an emergency. I mean, my bed sores are going to get worse if this doesn't get fixed. And there are Hill Rom technicians working 24/7 because all the local hospitals have hundreds and hundreds of Hill Rom beds. And they go to the hospitals 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, as needed. But they don't want to send those hospital techs to people who have the bed in private homes. That's what changed over the last 10 years. So they kind of keep the tech separate for some reason. Now, it's funny because if I could call the tech directly, they would be happy to help on a weekend. But Hill Rom, the company, doesn't allow me to contact them. I don't have direct contact information for them. The only way to contact them is through Hill Rom, the company, and Hill Rom, the company, won't give out the number to the local office. So I'm stuck waiting. So I said, well, guy, what am I supposed to do? He's like, well, if it's that bad, you should go to the hospital. I said, okay, thank you. Now, do I have to call back on Monday or will they call me? Well, they'll call you. Okay. Now, I didn't bother telling them that if I have to go to the hospital, that's $500 in ambulance fees. Now, that's covered by insurance, but it's $500 deductible for a round-trip ambulance. And assuming I'm admitted to the hospital, which would be the whole point, I would probably spend 20 to 24 hours on a extremely painful gurney before getting a bed, because I've been to the hospital a number of times and that's how it goes. And then the hospital bill for 3 days would probably be $1,000 to $1,500. So we're talking $2,000 for a handful of days because Hill Rom tech support is off on the weekend. And their answer is, well, go to the hospital. Well, no, I can't do that. So here's the other thing about Hill Rom. And I had the same problem last time. We bought the bed ourselves. We didn't go through insurance because they didn't have insurance at the time. Now that I have insurance, if we need something fixed with the bed, Hill Rom tells you go to your insurance company. But we go to the insurance company, and the insurance company says, sorry, we don't service or provide service for a bed that you didn't get through us. But we could never get this bed through our insurance company because they would never go for a bed that cost this much money. So it's kind of a circle. But fine. If you private pay for the bed, you're basically going to private pay for the repairs. And Hill Rom, they don't charge you after the fact. No. They want the money first. You tell them what the problem is. They tell you all the equipment it might possibly be to be fixed. Then they want a credit card. They pre-charge the credit card for however many hundreds or thousands of dollars that if all that equipment was needed, they charge you. And then if it happens you don't need all that equipment, they refund you. And this happened last time. There was an issue. They put $700 on my credit card before they would even send somebody to my house. The guy came to my house, and it turned out to be a plastic tube that he didn't even need to replace. He just cut a piece off of a tube that was already on the bed that had become kinked and reconnected it. So I ended up only having to pay for some time of him getting here. So they refunded almost the full $700, which was great. It was a good surprise. But this time the pump is certainly going to be a few $100, and God knows what else they're going to tack on. But it gets better, because it's not that they're going to come Monday. And it's not even that I can call them Monday and give them my credit card and make the appointment for them to come. Monday, they are going to send me forms. Forms that say I am not going through my insurance company. And forms I have to sign and get back to them. And that takes time because they've got to fax it to me. They don't email. I've got to fax it back to them. Got to wait for somebody over there in one department to initial it, then send it to another department, and then a third guy finally can call the local Hill Rom office to have them set up a time that they can come and look at my bed. So this literally takes almost a full business day to do for this bullshit piece of paper, and I just want to give them my money. I can understand they're afraid they won't be paid if they were charging me after the fact. But they're taking the money up front. There's no risk they're not getting paid. It just builds and builds and builds. And you want to scream. You want to laugh. You can't believe things are this bad. It is absurd. The hoops you have to jump through to give a company money to fix their own damn product. It's nuts. It's nuts. So that's what I've been going through the last couple days. The bed I'm in right now, it is not comfortable. Knock wood. So far, the bed sore appears to be okay. I'm moving a lot to try to keep weight off of it, but it's not pleasant. And I'm sorry for the rant, but I did I did describe this was going to be a rant. And I see a lot of people posted in chat. Man, thank you guys so much for showing up. Let me uh, let me go through the chat and read what's here. Darth, you were first. Thank you so much. Looking well, coming in loud and clear. Well, might be coming in loud and clear, but if this is looking well, you don't know me. Um, but thank you. Leaves through the window. I don't know what that was. Peter Quinn, hello Peter Quinn. Ty Coles, hello Ty. Thank you guys so much for coming on. I just needed to vent. A good time and a good feast. Yes, Thanksgiving was. I got eczema and it's been pretty bad. I'm sorry about that, Peter. Oh man, going through the hospital, the nursing home, seeing all the sickness and the sadness that's there, it weighs on me heavily. And I feel so bad for so many people. You guys give me one more minute. I will be right back. Um, I just need to uh, let my mom pass, and I'm sure she doesn't want to be on screen. So give me 1 minute. Enjoy my fish. They're not like the anti-trackers fish. They're better fish. And I don't have any music, so just contemplate in silence. Okay. You good? So yeah, there is no lawsuit. They saved my life. A lot of people probably would have died in that situation. Um, Although a lot of people maybe they never would have got sick as sick as I did. I'll never know. It's just one of those things. Uh, my mom was allowed an ICU, probably due to the fact she's a retired nurse and had done shifts in the ICU. Well, the hospital allowed family in the ICU, but during their shift change, which was twice a day, I believe, maybe 3 times, they did have everybody leave because they didn't want extra people while it was already crowded as the shifts were changing. However, once that trach incident happened, nobody was ever going to leave me alone again, and the hospital just dealt with it. From that point on, there was always a friend or family member with me, right up until I ended up coming home. All through the night, every day, every minute, I was in the hospital, and every day, night, and minute, I was in the rehab. Somebody was with me. I mean, they might run out of the room to get me a drink or something, but they were there. And they were never gone for more than 5 minutes. Um, so I know how to get people breathing with a pen. Yeah. Emergency trach. Yeah, I've seen that on TV shows. Um, if it ever happens to me, just aim for the hole. You'll see where it's supposed to go. Uh, Bloody hell, we have safeties here for that. Even put some medical tape on the tube to stick it somewhere. Exactly. Exactly. I mean, even on TV shows. In fact, Sopranos, um, when Tony Soprano was shot and in the hospital and trached, there was the tube. I believe it was Sopranos. There was the tube tied to a arm above him. And I only go back to Sopranos because it was around the time I got sick. Um, and in rewatching it, we saw it. But there's been a lot of TV shows and movies since where we see that arm. How it went like that, I don't know. I couldn't have been the first person trached like that in their ICU. Did they never use arms? Was I just unlucky? I don't know. I'll never know. It's one of those things. Peter, I've had 3 spontaneous collapsed lungs. Genetic. I'm sorry to hear that. Left side for all, thankfully. Honestly, I wouldn't even know. My camera is making me not sure which side is which. I wouldn't know what it felt like because thankfully I was asleep. Oh, and you're 6'5". Wow, that is. I mean, it's great. It's great in some ways to be tall, but I look around at older people and really old people, and you don't see a lot of tall old people. You just don't. I realized that a long time ago. And I've seen studies. Shorter people live longer. It's science. Doesn't mean I have seen a tall old person. So there are exceptions, but we're not the rule. But you know what? I've always been the exception, so maybe. No, the beds in this. Excuse me. No, the beds in this country ain't made for people our height. You got it. The beds aren't made. The cars aren't made. The wheelchairs aren't made. I mean, even when I was walking and driving, I had a Jeep and a Grand Cherokee. And now, okay, my hair, you can't see it, but I've got a bit of a bald spot in back, and I've had it for a long time. And it got to the point before I'd gotten sick that I just decided to buzz the hair and own it. I was getting tired of combing the hair over, but that extra inch I had of hair on top, it would literally hit the ceiling of my Jeep all the time. So once I started buzzing it, it was so great not to have to take a comb with me or a brush with me to have to fix my hair every time I got out of the car. Because the hair would literally just constantly rub up against the ceiling of the car. And that's not safe. I mean, you hit a bump and your head literally is going to go into the ceiling of the car. Oh, that is not safe at all. Somebody 5'10", they've got a foot of airspace ahead of them, above them. Me, no. Cars aren't made for tall people. Nothing's made. Airplane seats, bus seat, nothing is made for tall people. But it is nice to be tall. It does have its advantages. Would I trade it? I don't know. It'd be now that I'm in a wheelchair, yeah, I'd probably have traded it. But if I was going to be a healthy adult, I don't know that I would have traded my height. Morphine is good. Best part of going for an operation. It was good. It was good in the beginning. I got off of it pretty quickly once I got home. Because it wasn't doing anything. I tried to stop it cold turkey, and I got sick as hell with morphine withdrawal. So I had to step it down. But I stepped it down as quickly as I could because it literally wasn't giving me any high or any good feeling anymore. Had it been, I suppose it would have been harder to break, but luckily as it wasn't doing anything for me. You didn't get nutrition. Nope. It was crazy. I did a little biller's laboring as well as Kitchen Porter. I'm sorry, Peter. I don't know what that is. Darth says, "Stop beating the mic. It did nothing to you." I know. I'm sorry. It's a good mic. I'll pet it. Punchy the Wonder Mic. Thomas. Yes, Punchy. Lore has his cat, and I have my microphone. I'm not going to read that one. Okay, I was 43 minutes in, I guess, when I said I don't know how far in I am in. So I'm probably another 43 minutes from there. Thomas Potts removed a message. Wait, the remote wasn't included? No, the remote you had to pay extra for. It made it an even $27,000. I assume that's what they figured, how to figure the price for the $5 of electronics in the remote. They're like, well, what gets us to a round number? $343. That's what we'll charge for the remote. And the remote broke years ago, by the way, so I don't even have it. Um, there's controls on the side of the bed on each side that I can reach. The remote's dead. And I tried to find like a cheap one on eBay. Nobody even sells it. There's for all other types of beds, but not this one. Peter Quinn, this is part of the reason it's taken care of here. We pay for our, I assume, national health insurance, NHS. Peter, it's great if it is. I would question how hard would it be to get a specialty bed like this. Because, I mean, we do have insurances. And we even have our Medicare and our Medicaid. And they will send a hospital bed to the home. And they will send, if it will take a while, but if they have to, they will even send a air mattress to go on top of the hospital bed for people with bed sores. But it's not going to be a bed like this. That's one piece with the mattress integrated into the hospital bed. You're going to have an air mattress on top of a bed with a piece of electronics hanging over that has the pump in it. It's not going to be nearly as comfortable. And I just don't know. Like, literally, if National Health Insurance would pay $27,000 for a hospital bed like this, then that's great. That's great. Even with insurance here, it just doesn't happen. Tip jar. No tip jar for me. I don't have nearly the viewership, nor the desire at this point. Sounds like his dog crashed into its speeder. I'm my mom's. We do it for love. Yes, Darth, you've told me. That's very, very good of you. I hope one day I do get better, so that I can repay the favor one day to Mom, because she gave up an entire life for me. And my father, he ended up passing away a few years after I got home. So. Yeah, paying sales tax for medical would be BS. Okay, you know what? I bet what you heard or thought was the dog crashing was actually my mom running out to try to wave me down to tell me that we didn't pay sales tax. That's probably what it was. Because she's like that. I mean, you want to get your facts right. I do want to get the facts right. I don't know if she needed to run out here to say it, but, you know, it was corrected. Yes, we have all seen worse on anti-tracker. Oh, well, that is true. I could take my shirt off. I won't, because I'm actually hairier than Lore Reloaded. Plus, I like my shirt. It has my web forum address on it. Do you know why it has it? Because this is an advertising expense and I'm cheap. So this is a tax deduction for my business. It is not clothing. I'm advertising right now. So check out juot.net if you get bored. I was thinking, his face. Yeah. I was thinking more of Mega 1. Oh, okay. Now, anti-tracker is definitely, I don't want to, let's not, I don't, okay, you know what, forget it. I'm not even going to finish that sentence. But I will say anti-tracker has more hair and better facial hair than me once it grows back in. I don't know what possessed him to shave it off. Oh, that was a mistake. Any medical bills are BS. Well, you pay it one way or the other. The hospitals pay big money so they get the best service. Holy crap, I was having dinner. Howdy, good sir? Oh, Luke. Luke. I don't know if you're still here. Welcome, Luke. I hope I didn't spoil your dinner. Wine and escargot. Probably. I mean, I think that's what all French people eat. Your healthcare system looks like garbage, Luke. From Luke. The healthcare system could definitely be improved. Unfortunately, not a single politician has any idea how to improve it. We basically got to get rid of the insurance companies, and they're like too big to fail. I mean, if we could get rid of the insurance companies, there would be tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people out of jobs. But they've become such bureaucracies that they're worse than having. You're better off with no insurance. Like some doctors will take cash payments because dealing with the insurance is so crazy, and the amount they will take is so much lower than they would charge the insurance. Like a few years ago, I was in the hospital. Let's just say I had kidney stones. They had to put in a tube to bypass the stone. The tube was infected. I got a multi-drug resistant infection. I ended up in the hospital for 2 weeks on IV antibiotics. I came home and I had a line in me, and I kept getting antibiotics at home for another couple weeks. The hospital bill for being in the hospital because of the antibiotics they had to give me, 2 weeks in the hospital, they charged the insurance $101,000 for 2 weeks. Not even in ICU, just in a regular hospital room. It's absurd. It's absurd. I would tear the system down and start from scratch. I had steaks. Peter had steaks for lunch. Good for you, Peter. I used to love steak. It's hard to eat these days. It's hard to eat something like that. I have little pieces. Peter, what you've paid, I would demand all the money you've paid back. Well, I can demand whatever I want, but it's not going to happen. Okay, now I lost. Okay, I'll be right back. I gotta fix these. Find where I was in the comments. Okay, this is why health service and bills should be government controlled. I don't know if I trust the government to control it. The government does a pretty bad job at almost everything they do. It needs to be fixed. I don't know the answer. If somebody wants to pay me, I will figure it out. But I don't think total government control in the U.S. will work. It might work in other countries, and that's great for you guys, but we have a kind of unique situation here. Luke, and I thought the French system was somewhat crappy. Silly me. Oh, yeah, there's worse. But other people don't have my experience. I mean, understand that. Not everyone is as unfortunate. It's legalized robbery. It really is. Especially for emergency care. You go to a hospital, you have no idea how much it's going to cost you. You have no idea if they're going to take your insurance until after you're gone. And then the bill takes 6 months. I've had bills come 2 years. 2 years after the date of service. Like, how would I even know to expect a bill? Bills from doctors, I don't ever remember. Did I meet them in the hospital? Do I know if they saw me for 5 minutes? They might have. You can't fight it. Especially when you're only paying, a few dollars. It's the insurance that's paying most of it. That's where the fraud is. If I fight it, then the insurance is not going to pay anything. And if it turns out to be legit, I'm going to be on the hook for the whole thing. Peter, the eczema has been really bad in the past, but since he cut out the lactose, he's good. Well, good for you. Good. I'm glad the lactose free has helped. The fish tank, yes. Yes, I have. Being a fan of Anti-Tracker, the first thing I wanted to get was a fish tank. Of course, I had fish growing up, but I can't take care of fish anymore. So I got this electronic fish tank. And then I made it so I could draw on the screen if I wanted to ever do something. In fact, I put a few things together. I figured if I ever wanted to play tic-tac-toe with people, you guys could put in a number, and, let's say somebody put in 3, and I would go here, and I assume somebody would say 4 if they're not an idiot. And then, I don't know, I guess I'd go here, and then if they're not an idiot, they would say 2. And then I would have to be an idiot to not say 1. And then they would have to be an idiot to not say 9. And I would be an idiot, well, a real idiot, because it's the only spot left, and say 7. And look at that. No 1, 1. Big surprise. I've also got a hangman screen if we wanted to play hangman. I've got graph paper because I'm an engineer, and I always preferred graph paper to regular paper. Of course, they have engineering paper, which is even better than graph paper. And perhaps my favorite screen, maps. I have a bunch of different maps that I could bring up. But let's say I wanted to talk about New York invading West Virginia for some reason, cutting across Pennsylvania. We'll say Texas decides they want Arkansas, they want Arizona, California reinforces its border over here, maybe. The Canadians, well, let's face it, the Canadians are going to be on defense. Even the fairly liberal people in Oregon are going to go north. The militias in Montana are going to go north. The surprisingly high-tech people in North Dakota will go north. Minnesota, they're weak. Canada will go into Minnesota. I'm sorry. They're all going to be at their football game. They're not going to know Canada invaded. Wisconsin, I think the lake protects you. We'll call this a draw. New York's big enough to fight a two-front war. They'll go into Canada. Vermont will, Bernie Sanders will secede from the Union to form a socialist, democratic socialist empire. What's that state? Give me liberty or give me death. No, live free or die. New Hampshire. They will certainly go up into Canada. And Maine is practically Canada already. I think they'll just say, hey, we already own this part of Canada. Nobody knew it, but we owned it. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm getting silly here. I'll go back to the chats. Your mic is off, man. It scared me because it's good sound. The mic hasn't been off that long, has it? Your audio has gone dead. We can't hear you. Holy crap. How much did you not hear? We can't hear you. Don't bother. Oh, shit. Is everybody gone? Can you hear me now? Well, I hope you can hear me. Oh, damn it. Well, if you can hear me, why did you pick your YouTube name? I'll tell you when I get to the end of the comments. Make sure that the sound is on. Yes, sound. Okay. I don't know how much you missed, guys. I really, I did mute it for a minute when my mom was passing. That was on on purpose. Okay, so you got shift changes 3 times a day over there. Yeah, it could be the same. In fact, I'm pretty sure it is. Here. Why did I choose Bird O' Prey 5? Well, it's actually not a long story, but it goes back to the early or mid 1980s. I was in 2nd grade, I believe. I was in 2nd grade, and we got our first computer, a Commodore 64, and a modem shortly after, and I don't know if it was that year or the next, we got a online service ahead of its time called Quantum Link. Quantum Link? Q-Link for short. Q-Link would go on to become America Online, but at the time, it was pretty crazy because it had what we would call a chat room today, called People Connection. It had email, but it was before it was called email. It was just called mail. And you had screen names. And the first screen name I picked was a transformer. But the second screen name I picked was I wanted the Klingon bird of prey. I mean, I was a Star Trek fan even as a kid, and the Klingon bird of prey from Star Trek 3, I guess. I thought that was the best ship. And you could only have 8 characters. So, of course, I tried... no, you could have 10 characters. So I tried Bird of Prey, but it was taken. So I tried Bird O Prey, and it was taken too. I didn't bother trying any of the other numbers. I went to Bird O Prey 5 because I thought 5 was a nice round number, and I got it. And literally since probably, let's say, 1985 to be fair, I've had the name Bird O Prey 5 in one form or another. On Q-Link, Q-Link got migrated to AOL when AOL came out. By that time I had an Apple IIgs. After the Apple, I went to a PC. My America Online account came with me. Bird O Prey 5 at AOL.com is still an email I use today. Not a lot, but it works. And Bird O Prey 5 has just been my online persona for 85, 95, 25, over 30 years. Over 30 years, or just about. So that's why. If my mother hears about that ward, she'd go and contact their bosses. Well, the bosses knew. I mean, the head of the people, my mother met with top people, and my parents met with top people in the hospital. We were kind of a minor celebrity there. I was, because they had never seen somebody live through what I was living through for so long. So they still know me. In fact, at least 2 marriages happened directly from my illness, from doctors who met other doctors while working on me, who probably otherwise wouldn't have met. So it was kind of interesting. You never know why things happen. I'd hate that it was all just a plan for 2 other people to get married, but you never know. Yeah, they sounded incompetent. Some of them were incompetent. Some of them were great. That's the problem, though. You don't know, and sometimes you don't know till it's too late, whether you've got a genius or an incompetent person. I'd trade it now. I would trade it while I was climbing and caving, probs not. Yeah, it's better to be tall sometimes. It'd be great if you could just choose your height each morning. I don't know. We'll work on that. Extra for the remote, lol. Yeah, yeah. $343 for this. I don't know, $5 to $10 piece of plastic. Well, the plastic's probably $1 less than that, and $5 worth of electronics in it. uh, Worst thing you see at a hospital is cancer patients smoking. You know, it's not the worst thing you see, because if they're up and smoking, they're doing better than I was for a lot of it. Uh, I don't smoke. I never did. But you know what? If you're gonna die, so what? Have that cigarette. I don't care. If you have a chance to not die, then yeah, don't. But if people know. Companies normally charge for the parts, charge the government, but not labor here. Well, uh, sorry, I hit down too fast. I gotta be catching up. Uh, okay, yeah, I'm past that. Good times. Um, what's your business? Okay, well, my business is small, because it has to be, but my business is basically a forum I started, juot.net. Uh, Technically, it is a licensed business owned by Joe's Ultimate LLC, as which I do business. We do web forums, we do web hosting, and I provide technical support for the bulletin software, which happens to be the software the forum uses. When I got out of the hospital and I had nothing to do all day, I would make changes and customize my forum. I got to know the software really well. People started getting to know me on the vBulletin forums, and I started creating custom add-ons for people. And after a bit, the company asked if I wanted to work for them doing official support capacity. It's not as an employee, it's as a contractor. So they actually contract with my LLC to provide tech support for their customers. There are other support people too, but yeah, that's the business. So it's a legit business for tax purposes. Anything for a free shirt. Yeah, basically. Well, not quite free, but cheaper than it would have been. To the Google box. Yep. I bring up Google. I don't pretend I know everything, but I know I can find the answer to just about everything in a minute. I got called a sponger by my government for giving my mom 24-hour care. Oh, that's awful. Sorry to hear that, Darth, but I mean, people need 24-hour care, right? I mean, especially if you can't do anything. Had kidneys fried with peppers, mushrooms, onions, and black pudding. It was gorgeous. That must be some type of European. Oh, that's that to an American. That sounds disgusting. I don't know. I mean, yeah, peppers, mushrooms, and onions. Okay, that's good. I suppose. I'm not one for peppers, but uh, kidneys and black pudding. Neither of that sounds appetizing. Because I know you don't mean chocolate pudding. I know black pudding is something else. In this country, we don't worry about the bills. Well, that's good. The main hospital system in my city doesn't accept my insurance. Might want to consider moving before you get sick. Thomas, I hope for your sake you don't have to go to that hospital system. Lactose free for the most part. That looks great. Oh, the fish. No, the fish obviously aren't real. They're Marine Aquarium 3, I believe. Yeah, Marine Aquarium 3. uh, for Windows. Um, did you buy the map screen in Massachusetts? No, I legally downloaded the map screens from Google Images, uh, looking for images that were didn't have any copyrights on them or that were free for use. So I shouldn't get any copyright strikes for using them. You should watch Life's Biggest Questions, Birdo Prey. 5, they do things like this. Give California to Mexico. It's getting that way. Not going to have to give it to them. They're just going to turn into Mexico one day. I don't think they're going to mind, to be honest. United States Civil War by Birdo Prey 5. Yeah, well, it's alternate history or possible history. Okay, the audio's fine now. You've heard it for ages, thankfully. You unknowingly fixed it minutes earlier. I guess I'm going to have to listen to what was lost. Turn the timestamps on. That was minutes ago. I don't know how to turn the timestamps on. It's probably those 3 dots. Toggle timestamps. Oh, there we go. So let's see. When was that? That was 5:26. Oh, geez. So we're still 15, 16 minutes behind. Okay, we'll speed this up a little. I had a Commodore Amiga 500. Similar machines, yes. The Amiga, the Commodore. Commodore was a great company. So that's why the movie is called You've Got Mail. Yeah, in fact, You've Got Mail was part of AOL for a long, long time. I think even on the Apple it said You've Got Mail. Peter in 1985, he had a Spectrum 48K. I'm not familiar with that. Luke, Star Trek 3 was my very first intro into Star Trek. Loved the Bird of Prey and Klingon Christopher Lloyd. Great Scott. Yes. I'm not sure which was the first Star Trek I saw in theaters. It might have been 3, but I had the others on VHS for sure. And I just loved the Bird of Prey 5, about the Bird of Prey, especially when it had the periscope, instead of the view screen. That was cool. And I know anti-tracker and track yards, they say, oh, it was meant to be a Romulan ship. Well, you know what? It's not. It's canon. It's Klingon. So, deal with it. Romulans. Well, in 1985, I was born. Well, Thomas Potts, gonna say you're younger than me. I was born in '78. Lol, your name is older than me, Darth. Yes, it probably is. I suspect my name is older than a lot of people. Poor Data didn't have the joy of growing up and tripping over his own feet. We all die, man. Darth is saying, my disabled uncle wants to have himself registered as a tank. Lol. Okay, if he wants it, all for it. Oh, it's iron rich, and I'm iron deficient, so that tasted great too. Well, these grits, you guys eat grits. I used to love grits. Now we're in the north, for those that don't know, but grits are a southern U.S. thing. But we used to drive to Florida every year, and so you got to drive through the southern states. And we'd stop at Waffle Houses and other southern restaurants, and we loved grits. We liked grits before they became popular in My Cousin Vinny. And for a long time I ate grits. Mom had instant grits. I'd have grits for breakfast. But I actually stopped eating grits. Oh. Since I got sick, because I found out grits somehow contribute to kidney stones. And I have problems with kidney stones. So I haven't eaten grits in a long time. I miss them. Thomas Potts doesn't eat grits. Well, they sound horrible. They really don't have too much of a taste, but that's why if you smother them with butter or cheese, they are delicious. I used to dip things in them, like toast, and get some toast with some buttery grits dipped on it. Or put a fried egg in it, cut up a sunny side egg and put it in the grits. It'd get all yellow. That was good. That's good eating. What's your favorite non-track show? It's a tough one. Of all time, my favorite non-track show, it's so hard. I mean, the Stargate series SG-1 I like a lot, but let's just say you didn't say sci-fi. I'm torn. I still love The Simpsons. The Simpsons, I still watch every episode. But I also love Futurama. And to be honest, the average Futurama episode is better than the average Simpsons episode. But there's so many more Simpsons episodes. So if I was stuck on an island with only the entire series of Futurama, or the entire series of The Simpsons, I'd probably take The Simpsons. But episode for episode, Futurama is better. I mean, then there are some great shows like, I was going to say The Walking Dead, but no, I kind of, that show fell apart for me after a few years. No, Game of Thrones, obviously. The Sopranos, I really liked. Because, I was Italian in New York, so everybody assumed you were in the mafia, but of course, the mafia doesn't exist, so that's ridiculous. No such thing. Then there's other shows like Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. I'd be hard pressed to say a favorite. Um, but if I, yeah, it would change. It would change day to day. Um, but I'll say Futurama. I'll say Futurama. Though Stargate would really be the first thing, but it's sci-fi. I guess Luke is into the Stargate too. First Contact is the first I remember seeing in theaters. Wow, either you're really young or you got to Star Trek train late. I remember seeing Star Trek Generations. I was in high school already, and I remember talking with all this because I was a science nerd. So I used to hang out in the science office with the science teachers. There were a couple of students in there, and we were talking about the Enterprise D crashing scene and how that was the best part of the movie. And people were standing up and clapping when it happened. Not that they were happy it crashed, but that the scene was just so, it doesn't do it justice watching it on television. When you saw that in theaters, that was something crazy. And then you got to see it again. You got to see the scene twice. So it was pretty good. Yeah, I know Generations doesn't get much love these days. But if you saw it in theaters, it was a lot better than watching it on TV. We better put fish in butter here and deep flash fry them. We love the Brits batter you get from the fat. Okay. I'm not a fish fan. Fish and chips, I know. But not for me. Sorry, I'll probably sleep after the stream. No sci-fi, I'd say NCIS. I watched some NCIS. Mom likes it. It's okay. I don't hate it. My favorite non-sci-fi time team or the worst jobs in history? Darth Raven. My fave non-sci-fi show is a time team or the worst jobs in history. I've never heard of those shows. Mafia doesn't exist. Funny joke. I'm not joking, man. There's no mafia. Government made it up. Okay? Just because somebody's got a vowel at the end of their name doesn't mean they're in this mafia. Saying the mafia doesn't exist is exactly what the mafia would say. Now, the mafia would say nothing, right? If you look at the mafia in TV, they don't talk. In the movies, you talk, you sleep with the fishes. Luke, admit it. You love it because there's a bird of prey in it. I do. I do. Generations, yes. There is the Generations, that bird of prey that more or less destroys the Enterprise D, though they cheat. Uh, Gotta love Gibbs and Abby. I don't know who they are, Peter. I'm sorry. Time Team with Robinson and Phil the Dig. Phil the Dog? I don't know. I have no idea who those are. I'm sorry. Uh, Luke says, as a European, I can tell I can tell you it exists. You know what? Maybe the mafia exists in France. I've been to France, but not for long, and I didn't notice any mafia people. But I can't promise you they don't. I'll take your word for it. Uh, Peter Quinn, good night. Good night, Peter. Sorry for keeping you up late. Thank you so much for sticking around and letting me get this off my chest. I will be calling it a stream soon. Darth Raven, Bird of Prey 5 Time Team is an archaeology show. They dig up fields in England looking for archaeology, and Worst Jobs is a guy looking for horrible jobs in history, and he tries them out and talks about them. Well, Worst Jobs sounds a lot like a show we have here called Dirty Jobs with Mike Rowe, and that is a pretty good show. But those aren't shows in history. Those are jobs in history. Those are current jobs, and he does them on each show. Archaeology one sounds like another show we have on History Channel here, Unearthed, but it only lasted a couple seasons. I would like those shows. I like those shows. Luke for Vark, they don't cheek. They use Starfleet's dumbness and lack of security against them. Yeah, true enough. Okay, They didn't cheat. They did. They used smarts. Klingons aren't known for always using smarts. Have you watched The Curse of Oak Island? I have. That is the kind of show I sort of like. But on the other hand, I don't, because I know damn well they're never going to find what's on it. That's about as close as I can get to suspending belief. I don't seek out the show, but if it's on, I'll leave it on. Hey guys, thank you guys so much for staying with me, for letting me get all this. Has the stream name been the After AT live stream this entire time? Oh, and I didn't notice it. This stream name was supposed to be, I put it in. It was supposed to be Rant Against My Hospital Bed. Okay, I gotta fix the stream name. Jeremy Wade. They found an axe from 70,000 BC here. YouTube at its best, yeah. There's a lot of, if you look for it, there's a lot of unexplained findings of old artifacts that they don't make sense in the archaeological record as we're supposed to know it. But that's another thing. What's today? Saturday? Oh, I won't be at Anti-Tracker stream. I go to sleep probably 2 hours before Anti-Tracker starts. I'm an early riser. I was up at 4 a.m. Eastern, so I'm in bed by 9 p.m. Eastern. Okay, guys. Thank you again. Thanks so much. We'll do this again sometime. Kapla. And now the awkward moment where I go to shut off. the recording. I don't even know how to shut it off. I probably should have looked that up. I take it we didn't stop. Still streaming. Oh, I started a recording locally instead of shutting off the stream. Kapla. Again. This time, good night.